True Credit. Manage your credit, manage your life.
George Michael was one of the biggest names in pop music. Along with partner Andrew Ridgeley, they had a string of hits around the world. But in 1986, at the peak of their success, George was getting itchy feet.
I was 22, 23. It's amazing how old you feel at 23. You think you're so adult. And I felt as though, you know, it was going to start becoming a bit of a sham. Because Andrew and I didn't spend anything like as much time by then. He'd moved for tax reasons to Monaco. So we hadn't seen as much of each other. It was getting to be much less of a relationship than a working relationship. And also I was starting to write things that I felt just didn't fit into the Wham category. And I took myself much more seriously at 23 than I do at 44. So I wanted other people to, I think.
Wham was great, but, you know, I'm sure that, you know, he had so many things inside him that he wanted to express that that was a right move to make.
George had to go solo.
I suspect that the moment that George felt completely relaxed and confident and knew he could do it all on his own is when he picked up the Ivor Novello Award.
In 1984, George had tested the ground with his solo single, Careless Whisper, which was a worldwide #1. It was undoubtedly the first sign that George was considering breaking up one of the biggest bands in the world. And in 1986, that's exactly what he did.
Andrew and I'd always said, you know, we're going to go when we're on top, and, you know, before it turns into any kind of self-parody. And luckily, I was unhappy enough unhappy enough with being where I was. And yeah, thank God it didn't last long enough to turn into self-parody. I think we left people wanting more, you know.
Wham went out with a bang, with a final concert at London's Wembley Stadium in front of a sold-out audience of 72,000 screaming fans, and one George Michael lookalike.
Yeah, to anyone who's not here
especially
today,
the people who didn't manage to get tickets, you know, we'd love to have seen everyone off personally, but can't do it.
but no regrets about splitting up. So a huge thank you to everyone, not only today, but for the last 4 years.
Now, Andrew pretended to throttle me, didn't he, I think? Yeah, I think, in all honesty, Andrew knew that we were just about to make a fortune in America. And, but I knew that that meant living something I was no longer happy with for a good another 18 months, you know. And Andrew was very gracious about it, I have to say.
Thank you very much! Thank you for the last 4 years!
I think we left it exactly where it was supposed to be left, really.
Inevitably, maturity wins out, and you let go of the things of youth. And Wham was a thing of George Michael's youth.
But emotional maturity was still something George was coming to terms with. He was grappling with both personal and professional matters. While searching for a way to distance himself from his pop past, he bumped into legendary producer Clive Davis.
I had gone to a British award show, and George Michael was just getting out of Wham. He said, I want to do a duet with Aretha Franklin.
I talked to Clive, and Clive had liked my work and really wanted to put me together with Aretha, so it was perfect.
Here's an artist coming out of a group that people thought were a little lightweight. Big hits, big sales, had broken China, had toured, but not the credibility. How do you get, from his point of view, do you get credibility instantly if an artist like Aretha Franklin will stamp you, support you, be associated with you?
Clive Davis enlisted the help of Grammy Award winner Narada Michael Walden to produce the record at his California studio.
For me. I don't regret a single moment. No, I don't. Looking back. In this room, George the first day, Aretha the second day, and then toward the end of her day, then George would come back and they'd wrap it up. Well, on George's first day, George sang beautifully. His first couple takes were the record. But then he wanted to keep going to the point where we were out of tracks. And George wasn't used to being produced. George produced everything for himself. I said, come in the control room. And I said, George, man, I'm out of tracks, and I've got your first stuff, which I think is brilliant, and this last stuff you've done, which is also brilliant. He said, well, go over the early stuff. I said, no, I can't. That's our records. So I said, just trust me, I'll put it together, and it'll be great. And he did. But, you know, he kind of looked at me like, So Aretha comes next day, and she's all excited. She hears George's part. She's excited. She goes and does her bits kind of quick, and then we put them together. And, man, that's when Fireworks really went crazy. George was on his A game. She's, of course, always bringing her A game. And she was kind of being, I think, conscious not to scare him. But then she couldn't help herself. She just reared back and went crazy. And it's on the record. It's on the record. Yeah, she loved him. She loved him, and he loved her. And we loved each other.
The single with Aretha seemed to give people enough separation between Wham and George Michael that it made the whole transition into Faith a lot easier.
With the love fest of I Knew You Were Waiting for Me topping the charts around the world, George found the self-motivation to start writing again. And he was soon back in the studio, recording a new album, which was to be his biggest yet.
Wham was just a warm-up for the Faith album.
He was already a big star, but it really catapulted him over the top. I mean, that was an absolute phenomenon. It really made him a bona fide A-list celebrity.
I couldn't imagine being much more famous than I was in Wham, so I hadn't really experienced American fame on the level that it was, you know, possible. So I didn't realise, and then of course it went into overdrive with Faith.
Great to see it all come together. You know, that was a really fantastic time.
Just clicked in a way that I wasn't expecting, and it kind of exploded.
It was a good album, and I think it was a lot more substantial than what people were expecting from someone from Wham, both in terms of him really establishing his own character and in terms of the sound of the music. It was a much richer sound.
You know, Faith could have quite ridiculously have been the third Wham album, as it was, almost, you know, because I think it would have. The songs were strong enough that even if the image had seemed a bit strained by them, we would have got away with it, you know, but it didn't. Obviously, I didn't want that to happen.
It was an extraordinary success. 12 million copies sold in the United States. And he really was one of the handful of biggest artists in the world.
Faith spawned no less than 4 Billboard #1s and stayed in the charts for a year. And along with the album came a new image.
That image just seemed to click, you know. The other thing is, I suppose I'd put a guitar on, which is a big kind of phallic symbol to Americans especially.
I will always wonder what was going on in his head when he made that front cover. To me, it looks like he's sniffing his armpit. I don't know what an alternative explanation could be. You don't have a pose like that by accident.
Faith's success was backed up with a grueling tour and promotion schedule, which steadily took its toll.
It was too giddy for me, you know. It really was, and I couldn't handle, just really couldn't handle the intensity of it. Your life changes, you know, your lifestyle changes. I was very scared of all of that. You know, I was really scared of all of this new power, in a way. It was too much. It was more than I'd expected at 24, put it that way.
The whole Faith process of promotion, videos, tours, and awards had left George completely exhausted. And one question was